Ted, CBS Sports released their rankings for the 68 coaches and what I guess we're calling it the Power Four now. I guess that's what we're
Oh,
going with.
it sounds so bad, and it's going to be difficult for me to make that transition. Doesn't it sound stupid?
4-4 clearly sounds better, but I do think it's easier. It's an easier transition, Power Five to Power Four. You know, I it's fine.
I
It's going
just
to
need to
change
start
here
over.
soon, anyways. So,
I know. I know. Power four it is.
Power
Ugh.
Four it is. And they did these coaches rankings, and it's always an interesting discussion to see where Brent Venables falls in these coaches rankings. Venables checking in at number 34. They've got him as the 34th best coach in the Power Four. And here's what Tom Fornelli wrote. The Oklahoma coach took heat after a 6-7 record in his first season, but the change in approach and culture for the program wasn't something that would take immediately. We began to see the positive effects last year as the Sooners improved to 10-3 and went 7-2 in the Big 12. Now we wait to see how the Sooners adapt to life in the SEC, where the schedule gets tougher, but expectations won't lower. I don't know how it'll go in year one, but I do think this program is better equipped along the lines of scrimmage to deal with what they were before Venables' arrival. He also gives us a reminder that Venables was ranked number 52 in this ranking a year ago. So he's actually gone up 18 spots after a much better year two than that disappointing year one. I'm just going to throw it at you, babe. What do you think?
Well, first of all, these lists are, it's impossible to rank because everyone's situation is different. Um, like some coaches don't get the credit they deserve for the records they churn out with inferior talent. I mean, the talent at Kansas is not the same as the talent at Georgia. We all know that. So it's much more difficult to rank these coaches. But I, 34 is, there's no other way to look at it but an absolute slap in the face. If what you're saying, if what they were saying is right, and he was the 52nd best coach in college football last year, well, somehow he won 10 games as one of the worst coaches in all of the Power Four football, won 10 games at Oklahoma, and finished ranked like, what were they, 12 or 13 in the overall rankings at the end of the season. So that doesn't match up. I don't know how that's possible. So it's weird. I think he's definitely much better than 34. I think where this program is and the gains that it's made since he took over, they stripped things down. They got back to the basics, so to speak, and building this program with a really good foundation and setting it up for success in the future. I I don't know how every other coach in college football somehow will get credit for the 10-win season, except for Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and he's all the way back at 34. I don't know how they justify it, but I mean, like I do understand, like, they haven't won a bowl game yet under Venables. They haven't won a conference title yet under Venables. I get it, but you kind of have to look at, like, considering what he inherited and what this program would have been like without him. I don't know. It's 34 seems pretty ridiculous to me.
We're obviously pretty close to it. And I think that when you look at it, Venables is being held to the standard of Oklahoma just dominating the Big 12. So when you have the schedule that they had a year ago and you don't make it to the Big 12 title game, I can understand these people who are ranking the best coaches in college football, or what they perceive to be the best coaches in college football, I can understand them looking at it and going, you know what? Better, but still not good enough. And that's where him being at 34, like that's just kind of how it feels to me, where they're like, hey, we know he's a good coach, but the
Got
results
to have some
just,
results. Yeah.
I, I think Venables has a chance possibly to make the biggest jump in this rankings this season. Like when we talk about this list a year from now, I think he could easily be in the top 20 if OU goes in year one in the SEC and wins 8 or 9 games. I think I think that would prove to a lot of people that may be still on the fence about BV that, okay, this guy, everyone knows he can coach defense. Everyone knows that. No one is questioning that. It's okay. Is he a top tier head coach? You and I think he is, but when you're doing these types of things, Ted, it's all about wins and losses. It just is. But it also is an interesting conversation, like what makes a great coach? What makes a coach the best? Like you look at the top 5. Number 1, Kirby Smart. I don't think anyone's going to argue that one. I think, yeah, Kirby, he is undoubtedly the best coach in college football right now with what they got going on in Athens. But number 2, Ryan Day. They've lost to their rival 3 years in a row, haven't won the Big Ten. He's the second best head coach in college football.
Well, and just think of the difference between Kirby Smart and Ryan Day. Like Kirby Smart, and I'm not suggesting Georgia was some joke of a program before he took over, but he elevated them to somewhere where they have not been. And Ryan Day took over a program that had just recently won a national championship and was in a really, really good position.
As Jim Harbaugh would say, well, he was born on third base.
Born on third base. Whew.
Still such just a savage comment. But you look at the top 5. Kirby Smart at 1, Ryan Day at 2. Dabo at 3. And I really don't think this is a hot take. With the way that Dabo is operating, with his absolute refusal to utilize the transfer portal, I'd rather have Brent Venables as my head coach. I just would. Because when I think of what makes a great head coach, it's recruiting, it's development, it's culture, it's all these things. But I think in order to be considered one of the best coaches in college football right now, past accomplishments, sure, you got to factor that in. But I look at it through the lens of, is this guy willing to do every single thing, exhaust every single resource to chase a championship? That's how I view it. And I don't think Dabo is willing to do that anymore. Or maybe it's been he has not adjusted. So I understand why he's checking in at 3, but Dabo would be outside of my top 10. And maybe I'm crazy for that because of what he's accomplished as a coach, but I just don't think he's exhausting his resources to chase a national title. I don't think that. And I don't think you can be considered one of the best if you're not doing that. Does that make sense, or do I sound like a crazy person?
No, it makes sense. Here's there has to be a balance between rewarding for your accomplishments, but also an honest view of where things are now. It would be like saying Tiger Woods is the 3rd best golfer on tour right now. It's just not the case. I mean, obviously at one time, but Dabo has a massive glaring weakness right now with the transfer portal and some of those things. Now, here's the deal. I understand his mindset, understand his thought. Now, I think there's a very slim chance that it works. Basically, what he's saying is we are going to recruit. We're going to recruit, and our roster's going to be better because we're going to develop everyone. We're going to be deeper. We're going to be more cohesive. It better work because I know. Well, I guess I don't know Dabo, but I don't see him saying, "I was wrong. I can't do it this way. Now we're going to start jumping into the portal." I just don't see that happening. I think he's going to stick to his principles. But I mean, I think there is something to it because, like, their culture-wise, Clemson is great. It's excellent. I would say, like, the flip side is, right, what happens at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin? Brought in a bunch of talent, a bunch of high-end talent, paid a bunch of guys a lot of money to come in. How does that work? I mean, on paper, it always works great. It always looks like it's going to be easy. This guy was a 1,000-yard rusher. This guy caught 85 balls last year. But it doesn't always work like that. You've got to have a really good core. You got to have a great culture to hold all of those guys that just came in. They didn't come up in your system. We'll see how that goes. But needless to say, Dabo can't have another year like he just finished up. But still too high on the list.
Yeah, checking in at 3. Kirby at 1, Ryan Day at 2, Dabo at 3, Brian Kelly at 4, Steve Sarkisian checking in at number 5. He was number 37 last year. And honestly, I'd rather have Sark than Dabo. I think from a X's and O's standpoint, I think Sarkisian is really, really good when it comes to designing and calling plays. I think he has proven, you just look at what they've done on the recruiting trail. Now, I know this isn't going to make OU fans feel great, but it's just the truth. They've done a really, really nice job recruiting, and then they've done a really nice job filling holes in their roster with the portal. They've spent their money in intelligent ways when it comes to NIL and filling the gaps in the roster. And Steve Sarkisian seems like he has got that thing organized. And it seems like they are operating at a very high level. We'll see how year 1 in the SEC goes for him. But this is as uneasy as I've felt about Texas in a long time with how he's got that thing rolling. And I think that means he's doing a good job. My uneasiness is a clear indication that he's doing a solid job there in Austin.
Totally agree. I mean, I've talked about it a lot. I really like the way he designs and calls his offense. We haven't heard the typical nonsense that we hear coming out of Austin, all kinds of weird stuff with that program. It's been buttoned up. They're putting the work in. It's a physical group. They've recruited well, done well in the transfer portal. Sarkisian's got it going. Now, I will say this. Sarkisian did lose to the number 34 ranked head coach last year. So, just throwing that out there.
How about that? Let's see. Well done, sir. Well done. Now, one of the interesting things when I was looking at this list, I feel like we are all constantly trying to evaluate where OU stands in the SEC heading into this conference. Whether that is a healthy thing to do over and over and over again, I don't know. But it's hard to not view it that way. And you look at Venables checking in at number 34. There are 10 SEC coaches ranked ahead of BV on this list. Kirby at 1, Brian Kelly at 4, Steve Sarkisian at 5, Kalen DeBoer at 7, Lane Kiffin at 14, Mark Stoops at 20, Eli Drinkwitz, who a lot of people thought was gonna get fired last year, checking in at 21, Josh Heupel at 23, Mike Elko at 32, and Hugh Freeze at 33. So you've got 10 SEC coaches ahead of Brent Venables on the list, and the Sooners play 7 of them this year. Remember, there's only 8 conference games. So it is, I think it kind of tells you where where people view Oklahoma right now as we head into the SEC, and they maybe don't have the highest view of the program or the highest view of the head coach. Up to them to go prove them wrong.
Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. He has won pretty much everywhere he's been. He just has a longer track record of being a head coach than Venables. Also,
Yeah.
some controversy. But that's the best way to put it. Some controversy there.
Hey, what did you say earlier? Using every available
exhausting all resources.
Exhausting all resources to win a championship. Okay. Well, I'll just say, number one, how about the list of coaches in the SEC?
That is, as I looked at the list, we have now looked at a lot of different lists. We went over, talk about possibly a couple episodes ago, right? Talk about who could be a first round pick in the next NFL draft for OU. And you saw on those way too early mock drafts, you saw SEC guy after SEC guy after SEC guy. And you're like, well, we're going to play that guy. We're going to play that guy. We're going to play that guy. I went through the exact same process with this coaches ranking, and it kind of just makes you realize the new world that we're in. It is what it is. This is it's the best conference in college football. I mean, there's just really no debating it.
Yeah, no, I agree. The good thing is we got a chance to see it in action. I think Brent Venables recruits better than almost anyone on this list. And I'm not just talking about like where OU ranks. I'm talking about him specifically as a recruiter. I would take him against pretty much anyone on this list. As a defensive mind, as like a football guy, I would take him against anyone on this list. So the thing that is yet to be seen is can he take a team and go accomplish something special? We'll see. It's going to be a difficult year, but got a chance to go out there and prove how good he is. And my guess is he's going to knock off several guys that are on this list ahead of him.
I'm with you. There are some. It's an interesting list to go through. I encourage you guys to go take a look at it on CBS Sports, because Mike Gundy at 15. I think Mike Gundy is. I don't think there's 14 coaches that can accomplish what Mike Gundy's accomplished in Stillwater.
Nope.
I think he's excellent. Has he had some goofy stuff off the field? And like, does he say goofy stuff? Yes. But he wins games, man. He wins games. And I don't think a lot of people realize how difficult of a job that is.
Right. Well, here's the interesting thing about Gundy. Like, I totally agree with you. I would rank him really high if I put my list together. Here's my question though with Gundy. Does it work with Gundy like Oklahoma State? I don't think they would be where they are without Gundy. But would Gundy be where he is without Oklahoma State? Like, the question is, would it work anywhere else the way that it's worked at Oklahoma State? Does that make sense?
If he was at a blue blood type program where the pressure and the standards were super high year in and year out.
Yes, that's what I wonder. Because he's got a little bit of Dabo in him as far as like, he's got some principles and some way of doing things that he's not going to change for anyone, it feels like. And, it's worked out well for him in the past. But to your point, it's like he's able to shove it all into the middle of the table at times, because if it doesn't work, oh well, we'll try it next year. I mean, he does have that benefit that a lot of other coaches don't, but he's super, super high on that list, in my opinion.
Looking at some other the other interesting rankings, there were two that I thought were interesting. It just shows you how quickly college football can change. Dave Aranda's at 55.
Crazy.
Just think, I mean, it was only, what was it, 2 years ago when they won the Big 12?
Yeah.
Matt Campbell, who I think at one point, not only would he be in the top 5 of this list, I think some people would have said Matt Campbell may be the best coach in college football. He's at 25, which is honestly, I thought it was a little higher than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it just tells you how quickly things can change and how perception of programs, dude, it just changes so quickly now. It's crazy.
I know. And I think that Iowa State's going to be pretty good this year.
I do too. I really like Rocco Becht.
I do too.
Fun guy to watch.
He's a good player.
Great name.
It's just interesting how some people get credit for what they've done previously and some people don't. You know, like what you did at a job previous. Some people get credit, some don't. It's just kind of interesting in there.
And Matt Rule's the perfect example.
Right. Exactly.
He's at 29. I do not think there are 28 head coaches better than Matt Rule.
No.
No way.
If tomorrow, like the best way to look at this list is if tomorrow everything was scrapped and you had a draft for coaches, how would that go? Matt Rule would not go number 29. And for that matter, I guarantee you Brent Venables would not go 34. You know, that's just a little bit different way to look at it, but Rule is awesome. But what about James Franklin?
I was hoping you'd bring that one up. James Franklin, your favorite, checking in at number 11.
The all-time greatest interviewer in history. Either he is the greatest salesman alive or his agent is the greatest salesman alive. It's incredible. I mean, nobody has been more average and made as much money as James Franklin.
To his defense, all the big games he loses, they are underdogs in those. So he wins, for the most part, he wins the games he's supposed to win and loses the games he's supposed to lose. But the problem is, it appears that he loses every single one of the games he's supposed to lose.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just interesting. It's happened for pretty much his entire tenure. Ryan Day, who has lost like 3 Big Ten games since he took over, it's like people were wondering if he's on the hot seat or if he's going to get fired after they lost to Michigan again. Think about the differences in the way those two programs carry each other. It's frankly, it's unbecoming of Penn State to not have any pressure on their coach whenever he continues to lose to the same teams over and over.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. I do think Dan Lanning being ranked ahead of Lincoln Riley is interesting. Lincoln Riley at 10, Dan Lanning at 9. I love Dan Lanning. I do. I think he is going to be a very successful head coach for a very long time. He has lost like all of his big games, though.
Yeah.
I think Lanning is the perfect example of, you look at that situation, you look at what Oregon is doing as a program, and you go, that guy's going to have a lot of success. And I think that's why he's checking in the top 10, not really necessarily what he's accomplished. Hadn't won a conference title, hadn't been to the playoff. But he's top 10 because I think it's more of a projection for Lanning where everyone's acknowledging, going, hey, this guy, he's going to be something.
Well, I agree, but
and the personality.
it goes back to my point though. Look at how differently he's treated than Brent Venables. Like Oregon, he took over when Oregon was in a really good place, but he's also got like the best of all the resources and everything else. And for whatever reason, he gets no negative marks and only positive marks. It's like, that's what I'm saying, is like some guys get the benefit of the doubt and others don't. It's like, well, yeah, but Lanning was, a crucial part for Kirby Smart whenever they were winning championships. Well, wasn't Brent Venables, doesn't Brent Venables, shouldn't he get that same? I don't know. It's weird. Whatever. You get to prove it on the field, I guess. That's the beauty of it.
I think where Brent Venables sits in this coach's ranking a year from now will tell a whole lot about how the season went.
Yeah.
Because he could be in the top 20, maybe in the top 15, hell, maybe in the top 10 if things go really, really well. Or he could be back in the 40s, maybe even the 50s if things go poorly.
He's either going to start remembering how to coach and everyone's going to say, oh, we knew it, is those championship defenses that he led at Clemson have found their way to Oklahoma. So he forgot about those defenses the first couple of years whenever he sucked as a head coach. So it's either going to be that or the other side of it, which won't be good, but all fun.
Dion checking in at 61. That
Dion should
is
be 68. And the reason I say that is because he doesn't even want to be there. As soon as this season is over, the second it ends, and maybe frankly before it ends, he is out, done. See ya.
he is only ahead of guys that are going to be in their first year head coaching, including Jeff Lebby, who checks in at 66 on this list, or guys that have had 1 year or 2 years and they're at really tough jobs. Ryan Walters at Purdue, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, Tony Elliott at Virginia. So the shine has absolutely worn off when it comes to whoever is voting for this for Dion at Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to have a rough run of it this year, especially if they don't stay healthy. I mean, they purged their entire roster and they brought in some really good players, but can you Frankenstein things together? I personally don't think so. It's going to be rough on them. I will say though, I think Jeff Lebby's going to do a really good job at Mississippi State. Now, it may take a little bit for it to catch hold, but he does such a good job recruiting. He's already in on some really big name talent. It's going to take a while to get things in the right order down there, but I think he's going to do a good job.